Chris.
Heath.
Season's greetings.
How much Christmas music have you listened to so far?
Oh, dude, you opened with that? Ah, crap. Well, I'm going to say no because my grandmother's burial was 2 days ago and she hated Christmas music, so we haven't been playing any.
Well, that's very respectful of you.
That's funny.
Wow. Okay. Was not expecting that opening to go there.
But are you just decking the halls over at your house?
Yeah, dinner last night was very festive.
Great.
I was feeling great until this conversation.
That's so funny. No, it's been fun, though, because I don't know about you, but we had family and friends come over for Thanksgiving and the like.
Yeah, we had a family cousin over. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. Oh, family cousin. Okay, so you have not been MC, game master, just, Chris, what are we playing this evening? Because you're the guy, and we have company, and it better be good. You don't occupy that profession when guests are around?
I definitely don't have that reputation in my family.
Oh, I guess that's in one way we're different. I would not have played as many games as I did had folks not come over.
Gotcha. Okay, so you had a very social gaming experience the past couple of weeks.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
Mine has been solitary and isolating.
And like the icy north.
So, we made it to December. Today is December 1st, 2019, and we're recording episode 29 of Mobius Tubes, the penultimate episode of the year.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, we're probably not going to squeeze in two before the next year. Oh, I got to work on that thing for next episode.
Yeah, we're getting down to the end here.
Yeah.
That out of the way, like we said, last episode, we predicted the Game Awards, but they have not quite happened yet. By the time this episode goes live, they will probably have just happened, but right now in the present, we do not know the results. Did we formalize the consequences I love so much about who wins and who loses and what happens?
We neglected to introduce the stakes for the Game Awards predictions.
Okay, well, let's hash it out, Heath.
Yeah, let's do it.
What were you thinking?
Well, the problem is, what's a punishment, right? Because what's something I like? And then do we take that away or do we add something for content?
I have a proposal.
Okay.
As kind of a fun activity to usher in 2020 and to cross-pollinate our gaming experiences, I was thinking maybe we each come up with a list of 3 games we would like the other person to pick one of to play. These are presumably games we hold in very high regard. We both do that just by default. Each person has to pick one of the other person's 3 games, but the loser of the predictions has to actually go ahead and pick 2 of the 3 to play through over the course of 2020. And I don't know if we want to specify they have to play the game to completion or just give it a fair shot. Like if I'm picking something very lengthy, that would probably be too harsh of a consequence to force you to play it.
The Witcher.
All the way. Yeah, I wouldn't do that to you.
Or get to part G in
Nier Automata.
Yeah.
How do you feel about those consequences?
Well, it's good because it's also like a pseudo New Year's resolution. This is like your assigned reading. I'm not going to put a stinker in there, but definitely a game that you would never play on your own volition.
Right. This is your golden opportunity to get me to play Indigo Prophecy or whatever you come up with.
No, I'd never. Oh, you would be miserable. Am I that evil?
And yeah, and it's fun because we're both participating in it, and then the loser just has to go one more game.
Yeah, so we come up with 3. The winner need only play 1, and then the loser must play 2.
I agree. I accept.
Okay.
Shake on it.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough of an intro. Shall I get into what I've been playing, Heath?
Sure. Let me see if I can guess. You finished both of your games yesterday and led off with no indication of your next thing.
Yeah, you have nothing to go on. Also, I like how you refer to the podcast episode we recorded 2 weeks ago as yesterday.
What, 20? Oh, did I just say yesterday?
Yeah, a couple of seconds ago.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, Chris, when we're not recording, I go into a comatose state in which nothing else matters. I'm only thinking, I'm only alive when I hit record.
We resuscitate you only for podcast episodes.
Yeah, that's why it takes so long for me to edit, because my eyes are glazed over and I'm like a Black Mirror zombie.
You're in a fugue state the whole time.
Yeah. Sorry, 2 weeks ago, you led off with no preference of your games, so I'm just gonna go out and say Rayman Legends.
Oh, because it came out for free on the Epic Game Store.
Yeah, I'm gonna play that, maybe.
You should know better. I don't touch the Epic Game Store.
Yeah.
Blah. Okay, so I described this game earlier as a very solitary, isolating experience. It's also a second chance game. I dabbled with it very early on in the year, and I came back, and boy, did it grab me this time. I've been playing Hollow Knight.
Yay. Okay.
And I guess it's not totally accurate to call it a second chance game. This is my fourth attempt trying to get into this game.
Well, it's tricky, right? All right, so Hollow Knight. So there was once a Dark Souls game that wanted to have a big, sprawling 2D cavernous world map with all of these fun upgrades that you get to install, and they're each worth a certain amount of skills. And where it really shines is how your play style is tinkered toward whatever attributes you have, and all the characters are kind of charming in this like gloomy bug world. Did I nail it?
Yeah, those are all accurate descriptors of Hollow Knight.
Oh, I didn't even mention platforming, though.
Yeah. In many ways, I would almost call Hollow Knight the quintessential Metroidvania game. Although it is in neither the Metroid franchise nor the Castlevania franchise.
Quick, what's a Metroidvania again? Sorry, I'm just thinking that, because remember how I said Uncle Richard was delighted by your Prey commentary?
Yeah, that made my day.
Yeah, and he's still like, I have no idea what you're talking about, except for the glue gun. And then what was he saying? Like, you're trying to move the printer with leverage level 1, and then, that made him... That tracked. But Metroidvania is basically like a go out and fight things and explore this interconnected network of rooms and buildings, right?
Usually from like a 2D perspective, almost labyrinthian level design. A hallmark is it's not linear, so you kind of just pick a direction and go for it. The order in which you explore this very large, and in the case of Hollow Knight, extremely large world is kind of up to you. But there are barriers blocking your progress in certain areas that you eventually overcome by finding cool new abilities, which means you get to circle back, come back to areas you explored a dozen hours ago, and suddenly there's a whole bunch of new avenues for you to explore. So it's an expansive game, just continues to blossom into new directions as you go back to old areas. That's a Metroidvania game in a nutshell. But let's talk about Hollow Knight specifically.
Yeah.
I just kept bouncing off this game. I kept throwing myself against this wall because I'd heard so much praise, so many people lauding this game. Aesthetically, it's immediately appealing. It's like you said, you're exploring this kind of dilapidated, old, abandoned civilization called the Kingdom of Hollow Nest, which is this world populated by bugs. And I hate bugs, Heath. But in this game, they're also lovingly hand-drawn and, dare I say, cutely designed, that they're just charming and endearing to meet. To say this game has a large cast of characters is technically accurate. However, these characters are only characterized by maybe 2 to 3 sentences they'll say to you, the briefest snippets of dialogue. However, the way these guys are animated and their cyclical motions as they stand in place and chirp at you, and they all have these really
like voice
adorable,
acted, right?
Yeah, they're not speaking words, but they're voice acted, but to make these cute little bug sounds. And I love everyone I meet.
Yeah,
from
like
the slugs to the praying mantises, they're all great.
Did you meet Dung Knight?
I did meet the Dung Defender.
Isn't the Dung Defender like he's really triumphant even though he's just a poo man?
Yes, he is oozing confidence. He's a kind of a mid-game boss you'll encounter, but like he is the heroic stereotype to the nth degree. But he's a dung beetle, and it's that kind of juxtaposition is funny.
Yeah.
So, beautiful world, soundtrack kind of muted, somber, lots of piano keys and strings in there. It's gorgeous to listen to. So, like I said, aesthetics, they hit it out of the park. Mechanics, at the beginning, this game is not afraid to start you with the barest of essentials. At the very start, you can jump and you can slash with your nail. What was turning me off initially is how patient they are in doling it out. You know, in most of these platforming games, you expect to see the double jump pretty soon. Like, that's something that's just an inevitability.
Right.
I was approaching the end of the game by the time I finally get the double jump, which has its merits to it, because now that I can double jump, and I went so long without that ability, I just feel like I'm on steroids. It's just completely opened up this world and made traversal so trivial in areas that used to be a major headache that I am so appreciative of it that it's like an incredible feeling. I feel like I'm a Superman now.
Well, yeah,
but,
you know how, because Bailey and I were playing Firewatch, you know how like half of the map is curtained off by these thorny thorns that you can't get through until you get the fire axe. I imagine in Hollow Knight, once you get the double jump, it just opens up the possibility of like some of the higher rooms in the nest.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I would very often walk by ledges that are just out of reach and go, yeah, I know what you're doing here. And there's actually a badge token system where you can put your own little emblem on the map as a reminder to come back here later. So I would mark those down. And as soon as I got the double jump, I had a field day going back to my old out of reach ledges and seeing what goodies were up there.
We didn't mention the map necessarily, how it's like shrouded in shadow until you get to like a map maker and then they record everything you've seen.
There's a cartographer character in the game, Cornifer, and he's a fellow explorer. You'll encounter him in all these new regions across the game. And every time you find him, you have the option to pay money for a map, which is crucial because trying to traverse a Metroidvania as complex as Hollow Knight without having a map is a purely masochistic endeavor. And the areas, they're so diverse. If you go to Crystal Peak, you've got conveyor belts that are like pushing you along, and enemies shoot lasers, and it has a very distinct feel to it. But then if you go to something like the fungal wastes, now there's like bouncy mushrooms and acid pits to avoid. So all of the different regions have distinct enemies, distinct mechanics that are only present in certain areas. So everything has a very unique feel to it as you explore.
That second one you mentioned, is that where the orange shows up?
The orange clouds?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of orange poison clouds in the fungal wastes.
Well, you know what I'm talking about. Don't the enemies all get infected?
Ah, okay.
With
orange. Yeah, that's kind of there's like an infection subplot going on as well. Which brings me to the plot. I don't have a great idea of what's going on. They're definitely taking a note out of maybe the Dark Souls ethos to storytelling, where everything is very obfuscated from you, but you get the distinct feeling that there's a deep lore here that you just haven't quite uncovered. I'm sure I could find an incredible YouTube story summary about Hollow Knight that would blow me away, but I don't really know what's going on. But to the extent that I'm involved in the story, I'm basically just I'm just imagining this as exploring this forgotten civilization underground and seeing what it has to offer. It has a lot to offer, by the way. I was initially turned off by Hollow Knight because I was afraid of very difficult platforming challenges, of which I thought I was going to run into.
Wait, what's it called? The Path of
The Path of Pain?
Yeah.
So I have not found the Path of Pain. It's my understanding that that's like super late game optional content.
It's the end. Yeah, you'll save that for absolute last.
It's more accurate to say I'm just mainlining this game, and that platforming challenges have been all totally reasonable. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. The only difficulty spikes come in the boss encounters, and the boss encounters are designed really well. Maybe not From Software level, but they're excellent. You feel like, so you're basically, the only way you're fighting is just slashing your nail like a sword strike.
Okay,
And
yeah,
feels,
you mentioned the nail before, but you didn't. It's just a sword for us, right?
Right, because your character, like everyone else in this world, is bug-sized. So a nail is a sword, and it's the most rudimentary mechanic, but it feels very elegant. These boss fights, they feel like a dance, dare I say, a deadly dance of just narrowly avoiding almost like a bullet hell level of damaging projectiles on the screen. But they don't all feel like that. Despite the game's fairly condensed level of mechanics, the boss fights are all wonderfully unique. I don't know how Team Cherry devised so many different ways to make what is essentially the same kind of combat loop over and over feel so different in these boss fights. And that's to say nothing about the great charm system in the game, where you can totally redefine your playstyle or custom tailor it to your preferences based on which charms you have equipped. Yeah, I love Hollow Knight. I'm towards the end. I'm not quite done, but I'm definitely going to see it through.
Well, here's a question, Chris. Do I need to play this before I play the sequel that's coming out?
Silk Song.
Because you remember the story with the sequel, right?
Yes, you were not playing the same character anymore.
No, dude, I was going to say they were developing DLC for Hollow Knight 1, and they just had so much they wanted to do. They were like, we'll just put it in a sequel. And so that's the nature of the one that's coming out in June of next year. And it's so fascinating. We led this conversation with it being a Metroidvania. You know how Metroid 4 is coming out next year, right?
Maybe. And also Metroid Prime 4. Different from the mainline Metroid games. It could definitely come out next year, though. Maybe.
It could. And you know what was like amazing to hear is because of how well Hollow Knight was, there was concerns that Metroid Prime 4 would come out and the reception would be like, it's no Silk Song. Which is fascinating, right? How like the one that is homage to the originator of the Metroidvania family of games might be able to overcome the originator.
You're essentially saying the student has become the master.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
I feel like those kind of comparisons won't be too frequent, just because this game is a 2D platformer, and Metroid Prime is, you play it from like the first person perspective. It's very different.
Gotcha.
Last thing I'll say about the way they designed this world of Hollow Knight. They pay attention to like the most minute of details. So you'll eventually come across the kingdom's capital, called the City of Tears. And it's this big metropolitan city that's in a perpetual state of rainfall. And then, after like a few more hours of exploring, you'll be in the area above the City of Tears, and you'll find the Blue Lake. And it makes so much sense that there's a lake right above the city that's perpetually being rained on. It makes so much sense. Yeah, of course it works that way. But you ask me, Chris, how does this... That's a very nice detail they put in there, but how does that make the game a better game? And to that, I would say, just because everything has been so well considered, it just adds another level of authenticity to the fact that this world could have existed, which makes me almost more like reverent of all the new areas I go into. Like, yeah, This is a place that has been abandoned for a long time, but this was once a bustling metropolis full of life. And yeah, I can buy into that a lot more easily with all of the minute details they included in the design of Hollow Knight.
Very good. Wow, you used the word reverent. That's okay. Yeah. So.
And then shout out to Game Maker's Toolkit, one of my favorite YouTube channels. He just did like a 40-minute breakdown about the world of Hollow Knight and how the levels were designed. And yeah, he doesn't give that kind of attention to just any game. So just another feather in the cap of how exceptional Hollow Knight really is.
Very cool. Best of luck on the path of pain. I feel like I'd rather play Devil May Cry than a platformer, but
gotcha.
That's just me.
Maybe I'll come back next week saying how much I despise and loathe Hollow Knight.
No, because I know the final boss, and it's a good moment.
Okay. I hear there are multiple endings, but I don't know anything further than that.
Oh boy, dude, it's like Bloodborne in there.
Oh dear. Okay, that's all I've been playing. I'm just kind of completely enraptured by Hollow Knight. What have you been playing, Heath?
All right, everybody take a seat. This is going to be marathonic. I should first start out by saying Bailey beat Firewatch. And did we ever talk about the accessible nature of Firewatch when we first discussed it?
I'd say...
For those of you who forgot, it's the walking around the national park forest, and you're just making dialogue choices and rappelling off of steep cliffs. What episode was it? It was 16. Go ahead, Chris. Did we mention the accessible nature of this game?
Probably. Just as a rule of thumb, walking simulators tend to be pretty accessible.
Yes. Despite that, Bailey did a very good job. She definitely improved toward the end of the game. In the beginning, she would do like a perfect U-turn and not even notice. But you always have your compass in hand and a map. So she would reach for that automatically if she ever lost her bearings, which was a marked improvement from the beginning. Her kryptonite is timed situations. Luckily, there aren't any aside from the dialogue choices, and that's understandable. You can't just... Well, I guess you can sit back and ponder which attitude you're basically going to go with. The reason they make it a timed sequence is because you're literally trying to respond to Delilah over the walkie-talkie, and you can't just have like 5 minutes of dead air and have her respond like it would spur of the moment. So I understand that.
Right.
She was definitely curious as to how faithful you could play as, how seductive you could play as regarding the dialogue choices.
Late night radio conversations with Delilah.
Yeah. She found the mystery to be okay, but not to the extent at which she imagined it would end. I would definitely recommend people introduce Firewatch to their less gaming enthused friends. It is interesting enough to hold their attention while not being so mechanically complex that they fall off of a cliff. Because she definitely, I don't know if you know this, Chris, sprinting in Firewatch is a toggle. So you needn't hold it. So she would just like click X and run through a trail, and then the trail would bend, but she'd keep going straight. But because there's invisible walls right where there would be a canyon, she didn't fall to her death. So that's a feather in Firewatch's cap. And
Did you give her the 4:3 aspect ratio?
No. We played it 16:9, and it's funny to note because she even mentioned verbatim, I wish my field of view was bigger.
In the 16:9, right?
Yes, yeah. And I spared her the details of me playing 4:3 because I didn't want her to think of me inept. So that was Firewatch. Okay. Here's a game I played by myself. It's a strategy game, so anyone who did not care for the Into the Breach and Wargroove talks, just tune out because I played Bad North.
I know literally nothing about this game.
Yeah, okay. It's a real-time strategy game. You play as this little, let's say, Scandinavian community of warriors, and you are evading the Vikings, who are just on a rampage. You're jumping from island to island, and when you deploy your units on an island, you will suddenly be invaded by, yeah, they might be the Vikings, but they might be other barbarians, and they come by boat, and they are here to burn down your houses. And as long as you can defend those buildings, you will earn gold. And you could spend those gold on upgrades. You could specialize your units, make some of them archers, make some of them pikemen. And you're literally just going from island to island, and new enemies will come, and you'll discover new resources. Because once you use a unit, it becomes fatigued until the next turn. It's very Into the Breachian, much in how that game you can only use 3 units. This game you can only use 4. But you'll amass an army and send 3 units over here, 4 units over there, and you're really just, it's against the clock. It's against the turn-based clock that is the Vikings are coming up behind you. But it's a real-time strategy game that lacks a speed-up, slow-down feature. Well, okay, I should mention, it can slow down, but it can't speed up, so there will be lulls in the action. Let's say you do a really good job at specializing your units to the enemy's weakness, and you just wipe them out. You'll wait like 20 seconds for the next wave of enemies, and if you're doing that late in the game, you're like, come on, Bad North, you can throw me a bone here.
What does it look like artistically?
It's it lacks detail. It's a very artful style, not gritty. It looks like Monument Valley.
Oh, not what I was expecting. So not pixelated then.
No. This is smooth. Yeah. But Monument Valley, but Innis.
Whoa, actually, yeah, it does look like Monument Valley.
Yeah, I nailed it.
Would you describe it as a typical campaign-based game where there's like you just keep playing and you win, or is it a roguelike where you're kind of expected to lose and start over?
No, when you lose, you go back to the start unless you reach a checkpoint island that you can reload, and you'll reload with the same number of guys, and those who were fatigued when you reach it will still be fatigued. So you don't lose your progress, but when I die, it'll say like, % completed. So there's clearly an end where you basically gotta like probably fight your way into Valhalla or something. The enemy variability is significant. You cannot go up against archers with anything other than your shield guys. They will just disappear. The rock, paper, scissors. The rock is so massive, and the scissors are so sharp, and the paper is so paper. You can't go up against anything other than their purest counters.
I see. So very harsh divides there.
Yeah.
I really like the visual style to this game. I think it's pretty cool.
It's charming. Little puffs of blood will show up if like there's like a really brutal fight, and then each of your commanders has their own little bonus. So one guy will have greater knockback, and then the other guy will be faster on their feet, and then the other guy, you can give him a holy grail if he died to revive them. I guess it's roguelike in that sense, in which if you lose one of your guys, unless you have a holy grail item, you can't revive them. So they're
kind
like
of
big
some
dead.
High stakes there.
Yeah.
How long is a typical battle, would you say?
Oh, like 3 minutes.
Oh, really short.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, you've piqued my interest. I'll be curious to see if there are any sequels like Mediocre East, Good South, or Excellent West.
I didn't know what you meant initially. Yes. So Bad North is a fun game that would be a great game if it had some quality of life features like that of Paradox.
What's next, Heath?
Next is, well, okay, we're going to take a departure. We played Ticket to Ride as the first game when the cousins came over. That was fine.
A classic.
Yeah. And then we played Decrypto when we went to Bailey's house. And I should mention Decrypto, because we've played Decrypto.
Yeah, plenty of times.
And some of the clues will be like the most cryptic thing that you could ever ask for. Weren't some of the clues like all people, like no people?
I believe it was white people, yellow people, all people.
Right.
Was the trio of clues we received.
Right. So some of them will be the most ludicrous setups. Decrypto is a word association, team-based, not deception game, but like
I would call it like a
espionage
code interception game.
Yes. So you're coming up with hints that will get your teammates to guess the code word, but vague enough that the other team won't be able to intercept it. So one of my words was apple. One of my teammates said red, which is a decent hint. You know, it's not a dead giveaway.
Lots of things could be red.
Right. And then it was my turn, and I went with look for worms, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Mr. Fusa did a great job. He said watch, as in an Apple Watch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was like a perfect combo, because that was a game that we entered the tiebreaker, and they had to guess our words and we had to guess their words. They were thinking birds, because like bird watch and worms and birds, you know, like and like a red cardinal kind of thing.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it was a perfect whoopsie-doo. And, you know, I was very impressed by his performance. Definitely, Decrypto is a game that will only get better with time. The first time you play will always be the worst. And poor Bailey, she did such a good job. One of her words was robot. And so she said dance, you know, because like you do the robot.
Yeah.
And her teammates didn't know what it was. They were like, robot dance? What are you talking about? And so I was like, oh man, I feel for you. So that was fun. Those were the only tabletop games we played. What?
How often are you reaching for code names now that Decrypto has entered your life?
I actually was gonna. We kind of were a little saturated on Decrypto. And my sister-in-law, Spanish is her primary language, so I wasn't about to do Decrypto with her. I was apprehensive too, for fear that her command of the language would be a disadvantage. And I think code names would have been more accommodating for her, as well as like other people who have played code names around that group. But are you saying that Codenames has exited circulation for you?
It could be a case of Codenames I encountered first. It had a long heyday right in the spotlight, played it a lot, and then this new sexy novelty that is Decrypto has kind of supplanted the Codenames in my mind.
I see what you mean. There's apparent patterns now that we've played so much Codenames. In Decrypto, it's still like a fresh challenge of trying to differentiate. Like for instance, one of our words was blood. So Mr. Fusa went with water because like, oh, you know, blood is thicker than water. That's what he was going for. But one of our words was rainbow. So I went with rainbow because rain. And so that was our undoing for one of the turns, but not to say that I didn't have my own missteps. One of our words was passenger, and so I was just like, hey, take a load off. They didn't know what I was saying. So I think that Decrypto, despite being a game that has my curiosity more than any other in the rotation, it's not the end-all be-all for word association games.
Fair enough. Wow, right. That's some good diversity in your selection. Some board games on Mobius Tubes. That's a nice change.
We're not done. I played some Jackbox Party Pack 5, and this is the last one, okay?
Okay.
So, I was looking at, because, you know, I have Party Pack 3, and then Party Pack 2 on my Xbox. And Party Pack 6 just came out. I was curious as to like, okay, now that there's been a decent number of these packs, if you were to look at a tier list, a spoiler for later, which of these would be risen to the top? On this Reddit post I saw, the number one game amongst like the 30 that they've made is among Party Pack 5, Patently Stupid. That's the game where you're coming up with, it's basically, all of these games are sort of a spin-off of Quiplash. You think our audience knows what Quiplash is?
If they do not, they're no longer welcome at the Mobius Tubes podcast.
That's not true. You know, everybody's welcome. Yeah, so Quiplash is little more than just write a funny. It'll give you a prompt, and the one who comes up with the more hilarious solution to the prompt scores the points. And it's purely, the fun you have from Quiplash is solely based on how funny the people around you are. I imagine in like writers' rooms for TVs, it's exercise to them. So Patently Stupid is a spinoff of Quiplash in which you're literally just coming up with like funny problems to have and then designing inventions to solve those problems. So people were just saying like, oh, I can't get away from, and then like the family cat. And so then you come up with like the catapult that will fling the cat across the room if he gets too close. And then you literally have to draw the catapult. And like the hilarity comes from the TED Talks that ensue of you pitching your invention to the rest of the group. And then you vote on which one you're going to fund. And, you know, your favorite gets the most funding. It's all right. You need to have good artists and good Quiplash players for it to be fun. So Patently Stupid, I would personally not rank as the number one Jackbox game. We also played Split the Room, which I was apprehensive of because I thought it would just be like a would you rather. But it's actually more interesting than that. It's basically the trolley problem, but in a game. So they'll give you a prompt that's like, you are going to be the recipient of a statue in your honor. The statue is being funded by a group that will have their name on the plaque of the statue. The group happens to be, and then you'll come up with something to fill the blank. And the goal is to come up with a prompt that is the most divisive. So you get points if like half the people agree or half the people disagree. It's sort of like Dixit, but for logic problems, which I really dug. So my problem was you're like an alien ambassador. The aliens come to you with an ultimatum. They say every computer will be destroyed unless we give them blank. So I had to come up with what would be worth possibly destroying all the computers in the world. And I went with all the helium, which is just funny to say because your immediately thought is balloons and stuff and high-pitched voices. But it's also like really important because I watched a video recently about how we're losing all the helium. You know what I'm talking about?
There is a helium shortage, yes.
Yeah, so it was partly, like a current events thing. And it performed pretty well. Like half the group went with yes and half the group went with no. Definitely, much like Decrypto, it'll be way more fun the second time you play because my family who have played Quiplash ad nauseum, their minds were of like, oh, gotta make it funny. So my dad, back to that original question of like statues being built in your honor, it's being funded by blank. He wrote the Send the Central Americans Back group. So,
wow.
And like I said, my sister-in-law is from Spain, which is not Central America, but close enough. So everyone was like, no, not to be like, yeah, send them back. So it was the most lopsided result. But surely if we played again, he would have come up with a more divisive solution. I think Split the Room on the tier list, it was ranked 13th. And I think it ought to be higher than that. It was way more fun than the next game, Mad vs. City, which, as you can imagine, it's like another take on Quiplash, but you're rapping this time. And it literally will, with an automated voice, read out your raps because you're battling someone, and it'll be like, come up with a symptom. And I went with whooping cough. So it'll generate a line. It'll be like, man, I'll beat you so bad, you'll get a whooping cough. And then you'll have to rhyme with cough. So you need, much in how Patently Stupid, you need creative artist types. In this one, you need straight fire rapper types. And the more clever they are, the more fun you'll have. And so, my mom did pretty well. She rhymed like molasses with asses, and it paid off. But gosh, at one point it was like, write an adverb for something fast. And so I wrote swimmingly, and I could not come up with a rhyme for swimmingly. And then, you brute force something, and it's kind of funny. In conclusion, the too long didn't read of this Reddit post was the order in which you should buy the party packs. And I was happy to know that it recommends that you buy pack 3 first, the one that I first bought, because it has Quiplash 2, it has that murder trivia party game that we've played, and then a few others that are kind of fun.
The Jackbox Party Pack 3 is the only one in my Steam library.
Yeah. So good on us. We're smart purchasers. And there have been 6 so far. So the TLDR is buy Party Pack 3, then 5, the one I just described with Patently Stupid and Split the Room, then 4 or 6. Dude, I want 6 so bad. You know why I want 6?
I don't.
Because it's freaking got the number 3 ranked game called Push the Button. Dude, if we ever... Okay, so this is Heath talking to friend Chris, not podcast host Chris. When we have like 10 people for game night, we gotta play this game. It's basically a more fun Resistance Secret Hitler type game in which...
You have my attention.
Yes. Okay, so did we ever play Fakin' It? Everyone gets the prompt except for one person, and then they're left behind, and then they have to be like, you own a dozen pair of shoes, Dad? And then Dad will be like, yeah, from, my boots.
That's a good one.
The best part of Fakin' It is the writing part, where everyone gets a prompt where it's basically like, name a food that's disgusting. And then the person who's the spy essentially is like, name your favorite food. So they'll be like, spaghetti and meatballs. And it'll be like, why do you think spaghetti is disgusting, Bailey? And then she'll have to be like, the texture, and like coming up with, it's a much more accessible version of our deception games, because you have to back up what you say, as opposed to like, why did you fail that mission? I didn't fail the mission. End of conversation. In Push the Button, okay, so the title is reference to you're all on a spaceship, and a minority of you are aliens. The aliens win if you vote all the humans off of the ship, like just eject them through the airlock, and vice versa. I desperately want to play this game, Chris. It goes up to 10 people.
That's a large party size, yeah.
And it's on the phone, and so it'll run like clockwork. Not to say that this is a replacement for those things, but it's definitely, I can see why it's ranked number 3. And that's in Party Pack 6. And that is literally everything that I've been playing.
Except you didn't play everything, the game.
No, right. We're not going back. That got uninstalled to make more space on my computer.
Fair enough. All right, with that, should we move on quickly?
Oh, yeah?
To a break, and then followed by the news.
Yes.
We will see you then.
Chris, what news are you talking about?
Oh, I don't have any news. Do you have news?
No, there's no news.
Oh, snap. Let's keep it in here. It's kind of funny. So we don't have any news, but we have a very fun segment in store for you guys, because, Heath, it's December of 2019. The year is almost over, but not just the year, the decade. The 2010s are rapidly approaching their final days.
Right. This is a pretty pivotal moment for us as entertainment critics because we have like our duty to report back on the successes of the decade, even though that goes back to freaking where were we in 2009? Or no, you count. No, the decade started with 10. Obviously,
that's how we're gonna define it.
Yeah, we were just out of middle school.
I was a mere 14-year-old kid. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
In freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
So there is no better time to reflect on the decade than now. So what we thought we would do this, in addition to bringing up a couple significant news stories from each year, just to kind of ground ourselves in that time and place. Heath and I, we love ranking and categorizing things.
Yes.
We are going to assign each year from the past decade into a tier list, just to make a competition out of this fairly innocuous activity.
That's the right word for it.
So our tier list will be defined as follows. We have the most highly coveted S tier, of course. Very few games will reach such a critically acclaimed position.
S tier is best year.
Yes, S tier is best year. Following down the list in decreasing order, we have the A tier, the B tier, the C tier, and the very unfortunate F tier as well.
Dude, I was gonna make a joke that was like, 2001 would be a F tier year.
Oh, yeah, I could see why. Thankfully, we don't have to classify that decade, just this one. So 5 total classifications each year could potentially receive, and I feel like the most logical order to tackle these is chronological order. So we have kind of a narrative across the decade, which means, Heath, we would be starting in the year 2010. I have the shortest of news headlines to mention here.
Okay.
I guess I couldn't find very much noteworthy going on in the video game sphere in 2010. I just saw that Microsoft released the Kinect that year, which follows Sony releasing the Move 1 year earlier.
Right.
Back when the big console manufacturers were chasing that Wii money and motion control craze was still in full swing. What a far way we've come since then, haven't we?
Yes, I think as soon as you saw the Star Wars Jedi Academy, I think it's what it's called. Are you familiar with this?
Isn't there a Star Wars Kinect dancing game?
Yes. Okay, so you're thinking of like the one where it's like, I'm Han Solo.
I'm Han Solo. Han Solo. Yeah.
That's a part of this game that I'm talking about where it damns the Kinect as a gameplay controller because these wacky gestures fail to immerse you in the way that the Wii and the PlayStation Move do to a certain extent. You could easily forecast that motion controls would die out well before the middle of this decade, if we want to frame it like that.
Right. Yeah. It was never really super appealing to the most core video game fans. It was capitalizing on a segment of the population that wasn't usually buying games, but they just didn't last too long in that sphere.
Right.
All right, which brings us to 2010's games. Heath, are there any standouts you really liked or you thought were especially influential that came out in 2010?
Obviously, the Black Opses, because we were still like hardcore Call of Duty at the beginning of this decade. Less now, which is really interesting to see, like where the Call of Duty will die out, what year. Because Black Ops 1 came out in 2010.
One of the more popular sub-franchises in the Call of Duty series.
Yes.
Mason, what do the numbers mean?
Yeah. Dragovich, Kravchenko, Steiner. Yeah, and then you thinking that you killed JFK. Gosh, do you remember the campaign mission where you like imagine yourself pulling a gun on JFK? That was I'm trying to think of other moments in Call of Duty campaigns that have been like, whoa, to the extent at which that was. Other games, Red Dead Redemption, obviously. You know, those
huge.
Two I took to pretty fondly. But I just want to mention Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Because I didn't think that you would mention it necessarily because you're probably going to go for that God of War. But Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was the first iteration of that multiplayer that I to this day would happily jump in with the right group and have like a great time, because there's been nothing like it since.
Except in following Assassin's Creed games. But yeah, I know what you mean. That social stealth multiplayer is a very novel concept.
Yeah, where it's basically just you're in a crowded market and you have a radar for your target, and then somebody else has a radar for you, and you have to use like smoke bombs and disguises and all these like really interesting gameplay things, and God forbid you get into a pursuit where like your target is running from you, and then you have the fun running on rooftops, swinging on potted plants. Like, it's everything you could want from an Assassin's Creed multiplayer, and in its heyday, it was so good. And I'm so if I could bring anything back from this year, if I had a time machine, Chris, I would not go back and kill Hitler. I would bring the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood dev team to the present and have them work on a new multiplayer sequence that would capture my imagination much as it did when I was not doing my AP English homework.
Very high praise.
No, that's too early for my AP English homework. My Algebra 2 trig.
Yeah, the biggest commendation I can give to the AC Brotherhood multiplayer is like, it's a valid strategy to roleplay a game NPC, basically. You don't want to look like you're an actual human or behaving like one.
That's precisely. Remember when I went into detail about like my favorite, most high-scoring kill in that game? I was a total AI bot. Like, you could not have differentiated me. And that's something you never get.
Gotcha.
Maybe, well, here. In like LA Noire, when you're doing like a tracking mission. Oh, I guess, yeah, in any game where you're stalking somebody down and you're trying to be unnoticed, and then you'll go like sit on a park bench and mind your own business while the target slowly turns around to see that you're not behind them and then proceeds on their route. Like, that's like a lame version of what this was.
Fair, yeah, fair. You mentioned some of the big hitters from 2010 I wanted to hit on. The only one you neglected to bring up,
Vegas?
I would throw Mass Effect 2 into the discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Mass Effect, one of the fan-favorite franchises to come out in the 360 generation. Mass Effect 2 in particular, probably most people's favorite. It's my favorite. The thing everyone always talks about is the suicide mission at the end of Mass Effect 2. And the fact that it literally could be a suicide mission, depending on how prepared you had been up to that point. Mass Effect, the whole conceit is you're bringing your save across 3 games. Your story, your personal Commander Shepard story, could come to an end at the end of 2, and you would be unable to import your save to 3 because your Commander Shepard died.
I did not know about this.
But not just him. Basically, all the main characters' lives are actually on the line in that final mission, based on whether you successfully achieved their loyalty missions, whether you upgraded the Normandy, your ship, to a sufficient level. All of those consequences come to fruition in that final mission. It is such a great level and a fantastic game. And the only other game I'd mention from 2010 is that, the indie scene is just getting started. Not too much is coming out, but there was one big indie game that came out in 2010, probably the biggest, and I'd call that Limbo. Limbo really made a name for itself. Back when the atmospheric little puzzle platformer wasn't really a thing, Limbo made it a thing, and that got its start in 2010.
It did, and I was reluctant to mention it just because I'm probably going to gush on Inside. But I should also mention, and you're going to be like, oh, of course, how could you not mention this? Civilization 5 came out this year.
Oh, yeah.
Granted,
I forgot.
I did not play Civilization 5 back in 2010. I think I didn't start playing it until 2012, and that's probably why I've been still playing it so frequently, is because I didn't, I haven't had it for 9 years. I've had it for 7. As if that makes a difference.
Still.
Yeah. But
it's like your game of the decade.
As far as playtime, yeah. Chris, how do you rank it?
How do we rank it? A good question. I was actually leaning towards a less favorable score. I feel like the games earlier in the decade are at an inherent disadvantage just because currently we've got this vibrant indie scene really like boosting up the number of quality titles that come out every year. That was not really in effect back at the beginning of the decade. So we've basically got a bunch of AAA games, not a whole lot of variety comparatively. I would give it a C tier. It's definitely not F. I would lean towards C. What do you think?
Oh, Chris. Okay, so dude, I think just by the nature of having Civ 5, having Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and like Black Ops and Limbo to a certain extent, and then Heavy Rain, which I've only started playing yesterday, I've gotten so much enjoyment out of that. I wanted to give it an A, but I was fearful of how much of that might just be my nostalgia, and maybe if I went back into the Assassin's Creed multiplayer, I'd be like, oh, this is not as magical as I first I'm with rose-tinted glasses, maybe I'm looking at 2010. So I put this firmly in B.
Okay. I can't convince you to bring it down to C. Like, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, very good at the time, but surely we've had better iterations of that multiplayer since. And
no, dude, go into what are you referencing?
I distinctly remember like Assassin's Creed 4 having pretty good multiplayer,
Unity?
More fleshed out. No, the Black Flag. I think that was the last time it was included.
No, I played that. I don't think I enjoyed it as much.
All right, maybe its novelty has worn off.
I think it.
All right, I don't think it's egregious to meet you up at the B tier. I will give you it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I'm expecting concessions in the future in return. All right.
We don't have
on.
We don't have to be in agreement, do we? Or are we going to take like the average of our things? Like if I give something a C and you give it an A, ultimately on the Mobius Tubes tier list of years.
We need to have a definitive
consensus
Mobius Tubes tier list.
Yeah.
So I will meet you at B tier.
Okay, deal. 2011?
2011. Let's just ground ourselves in the time frame.
Skyrim. Yeah.
I was thinking news stories. Two sprung to mind. April 2011. Do you remember hearing about the PlayStation Network outage?
Is that when people lost their accounts or something?
Yeah, major hack. This only affected the PlayStation consoles. Their entire PSN system was down for 23 days. Could you imagine no multiplayer whatsoever going on for more than 3 weeks on the entirety of the PlayStation?
I mean, depends on the time of the year. Was this in the middle of like the fall, like
it was
Q4?
April into May.
April into May.
So not the busiest time of the year.
No.
But like no one could play Call of Duty. No one could play anything. You couldn't message your friends. It was all gone. I couldn't imagine that happening like this year.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, back in 2011, it still would have been a huge outage. Yeah.
Could you imagine no one being able to play Fortnite for 3 weeks?
Oh, dude, grades would skyrocket.
So that's just crazy that happened back then. You know what's even crazier, though? The fact that in 2011, it was that recently that the U.S. Supreme Court voted to protect the First Amendment rights of video games as an artistic medium and fully award them the benefits of First Amendment rights.
What was the impetus? Was it Mortal Kombat?
Oh, good question. The case I'm referencing is called Schwarzenegger versus the Entertainment Merchant Association / Entertainment Software Association.
Wait, so is Arnold going to the Supreme Court?
And don't he's like, know.
The games, the free speech.
It actually might be because the title mentions the governor of California.
We went a full year without hearing my Arnold impression.
The fact that it was that recent in history that video games may not be eligible for freedom of speech and that debate was up for discussion that recently kind of blows my mind.
Me too, yeah.
what a different world we could live in now if that had went the other way. Like, I could envision a game like Disco Elysium where you can sympathize with a fascist or a communist ideology might have been censored.
I think they would have censored like Duke Nukem Forever first.
That's probably true. All right. Moving on to the games of 2011. Yeah, you said Skyrim. It was a phenomenon. And what a great release date that had, 11/11/11. I'll never forget that.
Oh yeah, because it was really ominous when it came on the screen. Yeah.
To debate the influence of Skyrim is a big task. Like, it's still getting released in ports all the time.
I still have not beat it.
Yeah, that's not an unusual circumstance.
Yeah.
Other big games. Well, not one either of us have played, but
Dark
we
Souls?
can't ignore the fact that Dark Souls came out this year.
Yeah.
Created a whole new subgenre. Still very popular. A very different design ethos to games. Portal 2. Portal 2 is routinely up there on like the best of lists of games ever.
Oh,
People
yeah.
really like it.
Yeah. Like, the writing is just as good as the physics-based execution.
Both are of the highest quality. And it was nice that Valve was releasing games back in 2011.
Yeah, wait. Oh, wait. Did we talk about the Half-Life?
We have not mentioned Half-Life, Alex.
I mean, I know absolutely very little.
The most impressive thing I saw in the trailer was how granular you could, like, there's a shelf full of scattered bullets and tools and stuff, and you can very individually pick up every single object in VR and like load a single bullet into your gun one at a time. It was crazy.
Okay.
But let's talk about 2011. Those are probably the three biggest ones in my estimations. What do you think we're missing here?
All right, my hats off go to Batman Arkham City, which was my most anticipated game of that year, despite Skyrim. Think of that. And then I just wanted to give a note to Saints Row the Third, which it was not the biggest game of the decade, but it basically started. So let's talk about Let's Play history. When you think of YouTubers playing video games and that launching their careers, you think of Amnesia: Dark Descent, which was in 2010. We failed to mention that. And then there's Saints Row the Third, which you're familiar with Rooster Teeth, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Rooster Teeth, the massive entertainment network that recently bought friggin' Castle Super Beast, my favorite guys. Their first Let's Play was of Saints Row the Third, and basically just founded that entertainment medium of like watching somebody else play something. And again, its historical significance is worth mentioning. That being said, I don't put 2011 as high as 2010, if you can think of that.
Wait, let me just introduce one more variable into the mix. Once again, the indie scene, not nearly as vibrant as it is today, but 2011 is the year Supergiant got their start when they released Bastion to critical acclaim.
Yeah.
That's a real doozy there. The narrator is one of the best kind of storytelling gimmicks I've seen in a game, how he's commenting on literally what you're doing. If you die, he's got something cool to say about it. If you pick up a new item, he has something interesting to say about that as well. I actually think 2010 and 2011 are very close in my estimation. Mm-hmm. They are playing on a similar field. I am comfortable putting it in B or C tier, depending on your thoughts.
Well, I put it in C tier. I don't think I have as rose-tinted glasses for 2011 as I did 2010.
I'm cool with that. I will jot it down in C tier, 2011. Maybe not quite as nostalgic a year, maybe.
Right.
Which brings us to 2012. Not too much going on in the news sphere, really. The only thing I thought was slightly noteworthy, this was the last full year of the 360 PS3 generation.
Oh, yeah.
And there were a plethora of online news articles releasing around that time talking about doom and gloom about the future prospects of video game console sales. People were concerned that this model was unsustainable. The Wii U actually came out this year to an abysmal launch performance and just continued bad performance. People took that as an indicator that maybe console gaming was waning. Also, just the 360 and PS3 had been around so long at this point that their unit sales were in a downward spiral for several years, and the trend continued in 2012. People were pessimistic about console gaming in 2012. That was very much disproven going forward, but that was the temperament back then.
Understandable. Yeah, I'm trying to place myself into the mindset of a consumer in 2012, and yeah, I feel that was true. Oh gosh, I think my family did get a console that year though.
My family got a console right at the end of 2011, like Christmas, so right before 2012.
Interesting,
and
right?
Yeah, it was a common talking point in these articles. Many were claiming this upcoming gen in 2013 is probably the last console gen we're ever getting, which is now utterly ridiculous.
Right.
Okay, the games of 2012. What are you thinking, Heath?
Should we start with Dishonored?
I mean, I would love to.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that's where your head went.
No,
Dishonored is fantastic.
I just wanted to, So Anderson Corvo jumps off of the page immediately among the 2012.
Corvo, Atano.
Yep.
Arcane gets their start with their own first big game.
Mm-hmm.
People attribute it to have like some BioShock vibes, some System Shock vibes. It's like the first big budget immersive sim we had seen in a while, although that's not entirely true because we had Deus Ex Human Revolution the year before. Dishonored is one of my favorite games ever. That's no secret. I think it's a big plus for this year.
Dude, the only ones I played were Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty. I was like the quintessential gamer at that point.
Oh, okay. You had very mainstream taste back then.
Yes. Yeah, less so now. Wow, it's really evident.
Interesting. Okay. Personal anecdote. 2012 was the year I realized indie games were a thing. The very first indie game I played was Telltale's The Walking Dead, which came out in 2012.
That's a good starting point.
Very interesting game. It actually, I think it got some Game of the Year nods that year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For the episodic format, for wow, video games can tell this kind of story, and it actually works. This kind of reinvigoration of the adventure game genre, no longer exclusively point and click, but also like dialogue based and branching narratives. It brought a lot of new things to the table. But that's not the only standout indie game that year. Another one that got Game of the Year nods was Journey, which you don't care about, but in the PlayStation ecosphere, Journey was a big deal. Emotional, very short, bite-sized game with like an innovative take on multiplayer where people will just join your game and be part of your experience, which was kind of a magical thing back in 2012.
I agree.
Yeah. Other big games. It's kind of a rehash of what we just talked about. This was the year Mass Effect 3 came out. I absolutely adored everything about it except for the final 10 minutes. So I think it's like gameplay-wise, the best playing and feeling of the series, which is commendable. Some big payoffs narratively that I didn't actually think we'd ever see. Mass Effect 3 is great despite the ending. Borderlands 2 was a pretty big deal back in 2012.
It really was.
Made a much bigger splash than I would say Borderlands 3 did this year.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot at the time. Oh, this was the year XCOM Enemy Unknown got rebooted. Do you have anything to say about that?
Okay, so Enemy Unknown was, yeah, like you said, the reboot. Yeah, and I own that. It's fine. I mean, it carries as much weight with me as does Fez, which also
really?
came out that year. Yeah.
I thought you were going to be higher on it. And then the last game that I hold any reverence for worth talking about would probably be Halo 4.
Yep.
You know, novel because it was the first mainline Halo game that Bungie did not make. 343 Industries took the helm. And this was the first Halo game that I played religiously after school for like months on end. There were daily challenges that would give you more in-game currency. I'd try to complete those every day. I got really into it. My friends were playing. This was like probably the most I've ever been into a multiplayer video game with like friends joining up in your party. It was a great time.
Good. Yeah.
So, of the games here, it seems like I have more fondness for them than you. I actually wanted to give 2012 a B tier rating. I wanted to give it B tier.
Okay. Sorry, the tiers are S, A, B, C, and F?
Yep, that's right. Those are the 5 tiers.
Should we change that to like D? Because like I don't really think any of the years were worthy of an F.
Okay,
I mean,
we can make it less harsh and call it D instead.
You know, it's not to say, you know, platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and then garbage. You know, it's that's hard to.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll make it D.
But 2012 does not belong in the D category, surely.
No, I was gonna put it in C, but I will rise to your occasion.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I'm putting 2012 in B.
Yeah, I didn't need very much persuading. It's just that from my own playing experience, it didn't wow me. But anyway, we'll just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's just an artifact of your mainstream taste back then.
I guess so.
Onwards to 2013. The only thing of note I saw in 2013, we got the new consoles that year. The most surprising thing about that, though, was when the Xbox One pulled a 180 on all of its online policies. You remember this? The Xbox One was going to require you to check in to play offline games like once every 24 hours to an established internet connection as like a DRM.
I was going to say
I
was like DMCA. What am I thinking of? DRM. Yeah.
Digital rights management. And this was the year the infamous E3 Sony marketing video came out where they explained how you share a game with a friend, and it showed like 2 Sony executives handing a disc to one another, and that's how you shared a game because the Xbox One wasn't going to allow you to do that.
That's so stupid.
But all of those decisions were reversed, although the damage had been kind of done, which is maybe why the Xbox One lagged behind this generation. And yeah, that was the only news thing that stood out to me. What do you think of the games, though?
I mean, we have to mention Grand Theft Auto 5.
Probably the game most worth mentioning.
Dude, it's still rocking the Twitch live stream categories. You know how, like, 6 years ago, and it's still being watched, let alone played.
It is a titan in the industry, no doubt about it. That said, not a game I'm super fond of. I finished the single player, and it didn't do a whole lot for me. It's no Red Dead in my mind. I've messed around very little with the multiplayer, although it's still chugging along, more popular than ever. But yeah, probably the best-selling game of that year by far, probably, at this point at least. 2013, I'm not so hot on.
They got Last of Us.
They have The Last of Us, and people love that game. It also has BioShock Infinite, which is probably the game I liked the most out of 2013 releases, although I think general opinion has it was super positive at launch, kind of soured a little bit as the years have gone on. Maybe people aren't as pleased with it living up to the BioShock legacy. Yeah, we got the new consoles this year, but I felt like the launch lineup, as many of them tend to be, kind of underwhelmed. We were getting games like Killzone Shadowfall.
Oh my God, yeah.
Rise, Son of Rome. Do you remember that obscure little gem?
I do. Yeah, I do.
That is a 6 out of 10 game that I guiltily... It's a guilty pleasure of mine, actually. I got like 8 out of 10 levels of enjoyment out of it. But there's no doubt it's not a great game. You're a big fan of the Stanley Parable, and that came out this year.
It did. Yeah. I'll push that on people, but...
Also, the year Gone Home came out, another walking simulator. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this was the year the term walking simulator got coined. I could be totally off about that, but it seems like some of the bigger ones were releasing this year.
I could see that.
If it were up to me, I would put 2013 in the D tier. It was the year out of this decade that least impressed me.
I think I agree with you. The fact that GTA 5 released this year, though, I was going to say that lifts it out of the D, but
here, let's push it down some more. This year
wow.
is the year Alien Colonial Marines came out, and also David Cage released Beyond Two Souls.
All right, we'll put it in D.
Very good. Which brings us to 2014, a year that has a soft spot in my heart, although I kind of won't deny I don't think it's that great. News stories. This was the fall of atrocious video game technical issue launching support.
Tell me about it.
Do you remember these kind of stories that were coming out? This was the year Assassin's Creed Unity came out, and that face picture of all the textures gone except for the hair, the eyes, and the lips.
Yeah.
It was a monstrosity.
Yeah.
So Assassin's Creed Unity released Broken AF, Halo the Master Chief Collection, Broken Beyond Repair. The online matchmaking was not a thing. You couldn't do it. And that issue persisted not for weeks, not for months. It took them years to fix it. And even after the patches came, it still didn't work flawlessly. It was just like a big improvement. Mm-hmm. Battlefield 4 came out to technical issues. Drive Club came out to technical issues and actually like shuttered the studio. This fall, for whatever reason, whether it's this new video game architecture of these new consoles developers aren't accustomed to developing for whatever reason, technical issues abounded in 2014. It was not great. Also, this is something I'm not like prepared to talk about very much, but 2014 was also the year of Gamergate. Do you know what I'm talking about here?
Dude, I still don't necessarily know what Gamergate was. It was just like a misogynist thing.
I did not know what Gamergate was until this year, actually, although knowing it had existed. It was basically this debate over the ethics of video game journalism that also got caught up into like the alt-right and misogynist groups that kind of used it as an excuse to like further their agenda. Yeah, not a good time. So despite all the negative news stories, there were some all right games and also some duds. What stands out to you, Heath?
Mario Kart 8.
That's a good one. Yeah. Many consider it probably the best Mario Kart. Is that exaggerating? Is that going too far?
I mean, friggin' it's still selling Switches.
That's true. It's like the best selling Switch game.
Isn't that crazy?
Very fair point.
Came out 5 years ago. I mean, what do you want me to mention? Hearthstone?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Hearthstone was great. Came out earlier that year. I played it for years after it released. It had me hooked. Blizzard took its excellent formula of taking something kind of obscure, like maybe Magic the Gathering, and just making it so accessible for the masses.
Yeah.
This is the year Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor came out, which was a big deal back then, the Nemesis system. People were like super impressed with it. I'm still impressed with it. I remember all the news stories coming out saying, oh, expect to see games copy this system in the coming years. And then no one did, except maybe like a diet implementation of it in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I hear. But
oh, really?
Yeah, with like, I think they're called cultists maybe. And there's like a randomly generated component to them, and you get this emergent narrative with your own cultists. I haven't played the game, but I've heard that might be true.
Okay.
But yeah, such a great gameplay gimmick and idea that has not been super capitalized on so far.
And it ought to be.
And it ought to be, yeah. Titanfall was a big deal. That was the first game I bought on an Xbox One. And
wow, you nailed it.
I really liked it. For something as mainstream as a first-person shooter multiplayer game, Titanfall's wall running and the burn card system, which you actually like, you pick this expendable upgrade you get very generously, but then depending on the map or the game mode, different burn cards are going to be more valuable. So there's like a meta game going on where you choose when you want to use which cards. And then most quintessentially, the balance between the pilot and the Titan gameplay. It feels like a David versus Goliath situation, but even as a pilot, you feel like you have a fighting chance because you're so nimble, you're such a small target, and when you clamber onto the back of the Titans and you like pull out its heating cord and you start shooting it, you can definitely down them. The Titans are a powerful gameplay boost, but they're not insurmountable. It was such a good balance they struck, and I really like the map design as well.
People are clamoring for that in Apex Legends, even though it would probably break the mechanics.
But they nailed the mechanics in the original Titanfall.
And then expanded upon them in the sequel.
Yes, the sequel that less people bought, strange enough.
Well, yeah.
And the last game that I want to talk about is just the Halo Master Chief Collection. Despite its launch woes, that was the way I played Halo 1, 2, and 3 for the first time. This game, more than any other, is what I associate with freshman year of college because a bunch of my friends also bought it. And like, you hear about the Halo LAN parties, and Halo Master Chief Collection made that a reality. For that, those 2 golden semesters where we actually like grabbed 2 Xboxes, put them next to each other, and then played split screen with a bunch of people. It was a very fun time for me.
Okay, good. Do you want me to mention Dark Souls 2?
Go for it. Kind of the red-haired stepchild of the Dark Souls series.
Is it really? Wait, no, I thought that it had a bigger splash than 3.
That's not what I've heard.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, fine. Friggin' Dragon Age Inquisition.
That took home Game of the Year at the Game Awards.
Right.
It's like the most forgettable GOTY I've seen.
Okay.
I've played it, and I liked it, but I wouldn't describe it as BioWare on their A game. It was kind of, if you mainlined it, it would be pretty good, but it was just full of fluffy filler content, lots of fetch quests.
Oh, okay.
It was almost like a single-player MMO at times.
Okay.
But although it's not a game I hold in very high regard, we would be not doing our due diligence if we talked about 2014 without mentioning that Destiny came out this year.
Right.
Do you want to speak to Destiny at all?
Well, it was big promises, right? It was going to be the thing that challenged Halo with its massive multiplayer component and everybody going for like these. It's the beginning of like the shooter looter dungeon crawling.
Yeah.
Engine that just was supposed to go for 10 years, and then it didn't.
And the devs were very adamant in saying, oh no, this is not an MMO. This is what we're calling a shared world shooter. So they kind of coined that term.
Right.
And we've seen other games follow suit, like The Division, say. Yeah. So what's your estimation of this year, Heath? I don't think we can give it anything higher than a C.
All right, folks. The ultimate question is, did the longevity that is Mario... It's the same question of 2013. It's like, oh, does GTA 5 rise the tide? Does Mario Kart 8 rise 2014 up to C? And
let me just I almost forgot. My game of the year of 2014 is an indie game, Transistor.
Oh, how could we forget? Yeah.
So that has to count for something.
So do those gems help lift the overall status of the year? And I think it's going to go the same way of GTA. I think you got to put it next to 13 in D.
In my personal assessment, I was thinking C tier, but truly I can't really argue with that. I'm comfortable throwing it into the D tier along with 2013. Which brings us to the halfway mark, 2015.
Don't be alarmed, there's still Mobius Tubes. It's just this segment's really long, y'all, we're starting to snooze. And so we interrupt this never-ending commentary to give you a hit song and go crazy, cause it's me and you here at the show, and we're making this song that nobody knows, cause it's deep in the middle of this episode. That's what makes it the song that nobody knows. I've been through segments that went too long, but I've already grown a beard by this point in the song. If I try to slip away, Chris might notice, but if we hit hour 3, I'm about to take that risk.
There is no better time to reflect on a decade than now. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, this is a long segment.
Here at the show, and we're making this song that nobody knows, cause it's deep in the middle of this episode. That's what makes it the song that nobody knows. Hey, thank you for listening this far. Pat yourself on the back unless you're driving a car. If you heard this through somebody else, this song is not for you, so put it back on the shelf. This segment is tedious, I guess, but it's important for historical purposes. I should finish editing it. Team Heath wins. Chris won't admit.
So we've been pretty stingy with our tier list so far. We've awarded nothing higher than a B.
Well, wait for it. Because
okay.
You want me to tell the kids what 2015 was like?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, Chris, 2015. Oh my gosh, it turned it around so hard. First, let's mention.
Should we do news stories?
Oh yeah, news. Yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting news.
No problem. I guess the biggest thing was the Kojima versus Konami scandal, and then subsequent separation. This was all centering around Metal Gear Solid 5. Who knows if we ever get the inside scoop of what happened here, but Kojima, after working at Konami for decades, very publicly left, founded his own studio. That's how we got Death Stranding. And yeah, it was an ugly time as Konami was kind of kicking and screaming, trying to pull out of the video game industry.
Right.
And this is also the year that, very briefly, Valve announced plans for paid mod support, starting with the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Did you hear about this, Heath?
Well,
how they wanted people to pay to be able to mod Skyrim and put Thomas the Tank Engine in it.
Wait, no, because there had been like so many mods up until that point.
Right, but going forward, they were introducing this marketplace where mods would be this paid luxury, and all of the this core pillar of the PC landscape was going to be monetized going forward, or that was the future Valve was envisioning. And people pushed back against it so hard, I don't think the plans even lasted like a single month.
Good. Okay, good, because we need Thomas the Tank Engine.
And Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, for the dragons, right?
Yeah.
And when he breathes fire, he goes, "Ooh, yeah."
Right. I mean, if we don't have that, why bother living?
Right.
Back to the games of 2015.
Well, okay, we will save The Witcher 3 for the end. I just wanted to
I'm rubbing my hands together with glee.
I just wanted to highlight how this is the year Bloodborne came out. And so, okay, you mentioned how Dark Souls 2 was the redheaded stepchild of the franchise. Bloodborne just improved upon the formula that was set by Dark Souls, making it this much more aggressive version. You could earn your health back by dealing damage, and that made it a lot less war of attrition that the first few Dark Souls games were, because you just had to like make sure that you blocked and dodged primarily and not get too greedy. In this game, you could get greedy, and boy, did it really build a world that had as much, if not more, imagination that Dark Souls, freaking with the eyes on the inside. I never played Bloodborne, but I could totally see how you could get swallowed up by it if you were even a little bit interested in Dark Souls. I'm calling out like Scott Straw. Anyway, the game that I played the most out of all the games in 2015 was Fallout 4. And Fallout 4 is still the best Fallout game, despite it coming out 4 years ago. Much in the way that Skyrim got modded, this is also a Bethesda game that has been just littered with mods, especially in the wake of Fallout 76. I think it rekindled Fallout 4's presence. Those two are just such heavy hitters in spite of The Witcher, in spite of friggin' Until Dawn came out this year. I don't need to tell anyone listening to this podcast that Until Dawn was the continuation of the Heavy Rain, choose your own adventure kind of it, to a greater extent with Until Dawn, because the whole butterfly effect mechanic, it was so apparent the way in which your decisions mattered. It would have a cascading effect by the end, and it was so pretty. It was as pretty as like the faces in Heavy Rain. Heavy Rain came out in 2010. And still holds up.
The biggest praise I can levy on Until Dawn is that it is my favorite David Cage game, despite the fact it was not made by David Cage.
Right. And we, I have not touched Man of Medan, their episodic successor to Until Dawn.
Right.
But it looks gorgeous, and I haven't heard bad things about it. So that's like another feather in the cap of 2015. And then we can talk about Rocket League, and we can talk about like Rainbow Six Siege. Wait, wasn't it nominated for Best Ongoing Game?
It is this year.
Oh, this year, yeah.
Rainbow Six Siege, an example of the Ubisoft trend where maybe their games at launch, like take a For Honor or a Division, they're not amazing at launch, but they like stick with them for years and years and improve them into something that's commendable, like they did with Rainbow Six Siege. Yeah, in 2015, I'm also very high on it, like you. I mean, we have to levy lots of praise at a year where Batman Arkham Knight came out, the best of all the Batman Arkham games.
So,
like, what an achievement. Yeah, so I really like that game. But on a more serious note, this had some really hard-hitting indies, like Rocket League is a phenomenon. You mentioned it. Like, I would routinely, when walking through the dorms, I would see people in the lounges doing split-screen Rocket League playing. It had penetrated that deeply that everyone was playing it in a college setting.
It kind of had universal appeal, yeah. Not just for like the FIFA heads.
Right. It has the sports appeal that is pretty mainstream, but it's also got this goofy appeal to it. Like you are a car hitting a soccer ball around.
Yeah.
That makes it less intimidating than the latest Madden or the latest FIFA. 2015, we have to mention, Undertale came out this year.
Oh my god! Oh my god! I forgot. Oh my god! Ooh! Wait. Oh. Moves 15 out of A.
Ooh. So yeah, very different kind of indie game experience compared to the Rocket League, but yeah, showing how you can turn the most rudimentary of visual minimalist pixel art design and then just flesh it out with these fully realized characters, the levels of the meta commentary going on about saving and loading
That thing
systems.
freaking closes the game window.
Yeah, it'll exit out your game. Messing with your saves.
It
and
remembers what you did.
It remembers what you did.
You can't uninstall
having a banger of a soundtrack.
We're still listening to
Undertale's
it.
phenomenal. It's funny that when we look at the AAA games, you immediately went to Fallout 4, and you said that was like your most played game of the year, because I barely touched it. So that's not even
that was your mistake.
factoring into my equation. Bloodborne, absolutely fantastic game. Yet, like you said, differentiates itself from Dark Souls games. The way I hear people describe Dark Souls gameplay is sword and board. Like you hide behind your shield, and then slash when you have the opportunity to. There are no shields in Bloodborne, which makes a huge difference. There are no shields. The only
it's just the dodge.
You've got your dodge. You've got guns, which you can use to interrupt an enemy attack animation, but it's tricky to do. So they don't have the same utility as sword offers in Dark Souls. So yeah, lends itself to a more aggressive, more fast-paced From Software gameplay experience. It's the only From Software game I finished. I loved it. The twist halfway through is phenomenal. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to ruin it for anyone. Yeah. Which brings us to the game of the year, of course. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The game of the decade, perhaps.
Wow.
By my estimation.
Wow.
Geralt of Rivia embarks on an epic of the medium of this 100-hour journey that sees you traversing across an entire continent of varied landscapes, all of which is more realized than the previous. That said, despite this game's scope, scale, pedigree for storytelling, what I take away from The Witcher 3 is something that I have not seen executed as well as any other game I've played, and that is how The Witcher 3 handles its narrative decision-making. Decision-making in a game is this very tricky thing, because in a game where you offer the good and the bad story choice, what is every gamer's immediate inclination to do upon choosing the bad choice is to reload your save, is to save scum, go back, oh yeah, now I didn't want to do that. Let me correct that. And The Witcher 3 is the best solution to that problem I have ever seen, to the extent where upon finishing my 100-hour journey and receiving the quote-unquote bad ending, I felt like I deserved it and any other ending would not have been appropriate. What I mean by this is there aren't specifically explicit telltale branching story choices where, okay, they highly choreograph, this is the big decision, the time slows down to the crawl, you pick A or you pick B. The decisions in Witcher 3 are happening so frequently and so almost subtly and nonchalantly that you can't really pick up on when the big decisions are coming into effect. And also the way that the quest lines interact with one another. It gets very blurry what is a mainline quest and what is a side quest, because you'll encounter people off in the far distance in this whole self-contained side quest subplot who then reemerge into the main quest line down the line hours later, which you weren't anticipating, except they remember the decisions you made in the side quest, which influences the main quest, which influences which opportunities you have going forward. And then you're making decisions when you don't even realize you're making decisions.
What do you mean?
It's almost like
which horse to ride or something?
Just something as mundane as, do you want to have a snowball fight or talk about our problems while we get drinks can have a big impact down the line.
What's the thing where you can gain money by like killing sheep or cows or something, but if you kill too many, you'll get charged by a big thing?
Yeah, so when the game launched, there was a kind of a cheap, grindy way to earn a lot of currency quickly by killing cows.
Yeah.
CD Projekt Red, being such an attentive developer, realized people were doing this and patched in a giant monster they called the Bovine Defense Force to protect the cows. If you kill too many cows over a short period of time, a giant, what is it called? But it's got this like, all right, so it's like a late level enemy that you will encounter in like an early level village that will just clean the floor with you.
Is it a Gwent?
And a Gwent is the most fleshed out mini game I've seen in a video game.
Oh.
Yeah, so within The Witcher 3 is a collectible card game called Gwent, which I probably spent 10 hours of my Witcher experience just playing nerdy cards in. Yeah. Witcher 3 is the full package, and I love it.
Is it short?
Oh, yeah, a short. I think that's the name of the monster that will appear to fight you off if you're exploiting the cows.
And you can beat them, but not at your level.
Yeah, you can beat him. It's incredibly difficult, but it's not unfeasible. Okay, that's enough gushing. We need to rank this year.
Chris.
Hey, Heath.
So in spite of the stinkers that might have been Metal Gear Solid 5, might have been a little disappointing, and Batman Arkham Knight might have been a lot of disappointing, but
Nah.
I think we have a case to be made to put 2015 in the S tier.
All right, so I don't disagree too much.
Come on.
I feel like A tier is more appropriate. Because 2015 had its fair share of disappointments. Like, I hear Metal Gear Solid 5 is the least Metal Gear game of the Metal Gear series, like from a story perspective.
And it was like unfinished.
Unfinished. Yeah, that's like a big disappointment. Oh, you remember when Evolve was a thing for a hot second?
I do. Yeah, that 1v5.
Yeah, asymmetrical multiplayer
Or
completely
1v4.
fizzled out. We got games like The Order 1886 this year, which is just it's not good.
That went the way of Rise.
What's your opinion of that?
It went the way of Rise, Fall of Rome, or whatever.
Yeah, very similar kind of design ethos is there, where they worked so hard on making this game look amazing, they forgot to put the fun into it.
Right.
We got kind of disappointing revitalizations of a franchise like Star Wars Battlefront came out this year.
Yeah.
Where it was just all multiplayer and it was kind of dumbed down. That said, I think A tier fits. A tier? Yeah, what do you say?
Absolutely. At least A tier.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm going to jot 2015 down into the A tier. That brings us to 2016.
I should mention that in 2015, which we just did, was Black Ops 3. I think it's fair to say that my Call of Duty affinity definitely died out early in the decade. It ended as early as after 2013. Like after Modern Warfare 3 came out, the next games, and we'll see it going into 2016, there's nothing to report in regards to Call of Duty. It really takes a massive slide.
I would agree with that assessment. Two quick news stories in 2016. The first news story of 2016 is actually a game. And that's what I would call the Pokemon Go phenomenon. Do you want to weigh in on this, Heath?
I mean, yeah, I played it at launch. I could see the appeal, but I at no point, because we were in college, or no, that when
it was over the summer.
Over the summer. So when we got back to college, boy, did these nerds hit the sidewalk. Like they came out of the woodwork, and the people were walking to the stadium to spin that stop and then carry on their way. This was before the raid battles appeared. I'm like level 34, I think, so I played it a fair deal during the school year. I can tell you, just on a university level, it just transformed the landscape. But you were referring to more of on like a national level?
Yeah. The 2 weeks after launch was like this, almost a whimsical, magical period of time where when I would drive through my local village, I would see roving bands of teens, and I would know exactly what they were doing because they were all explicitly looking at their phones and like going somewhere. And then at the gym, over like a radio ad, I would actually hear like car dealerships saying they were a Pokemon Go stop and telling people to come in and get some rare Pokemon. It was wild. It felt like an alternate reality. So just a wild experience to have lived through for that golden window where it was like the thing.
I mean, it's still a thing.
I mean, to debate.
You're getting crowds in front of the library when there's a special enough guy.
Sure. Other thing that happened in 2016, we finally got the launch of this current wave of consumer-level virtual reality headsets. That got its start in 2016.
Oh.
With like the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive and also the PSVR later that year.
Yeah.
So we're still living in this current wave of VR.
Yeah,
still going on.
That'll go into the next decade.
Definitely. I don't think it's going to end, really. I think it's only going to go up from here.
It'll still be niche, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be niche for a while. I think in our lifetimes, it will become no longer niche.
Possibly.
I fully believe that. I'm on the record. And we can attribute it getting its start back in 2016, which is pretty cool.
Right. What about 2016, Chris?
I think this is another pretty solid contender, actually.
Corvo's back.
Corvo's back, yeah. You read my mind like clockwork, much like the Clockwork Mansion level of Dishonored 2, which, along with A Crack in the Slab, are like generation-defining levels.
Wow,
Dishonored
really?
2's level design is fantastic, dude. I struggle to point to examples of explicit levels that are better than Dishonored 2 can pump out.
Sounds like Dishonored 2. And wait, what was the expansion? It was like a Feast of Crows?
That's Game of Thrones. The expansion to Dishonored?
Yeah.
Death of the Outsider.
Oh, okay, thank you. It sounds like Dishonored 2 ought to be one of the games that you assign for me in 2020 if I lose the Game Awards predictions.
That may or may not have already been on my list. And the fact that now you can play Corvo or Emily, each offering a very distinct experience, and the levels were designed to accommodate both playstyles, is just crazy impressive to me.
Because she's more of a ninja, right?
They're both stealthy-esque, but she can shoot tentacles.
Ooh. Lovecraftian.
All right, Heath, tell me all about Inside.
Okay, so it's still, you really want to set aside, if you were going to binge the games of 2016, definitely play Inside before you sink 100 hours into Persona or 100 hours into Dishonored or Dark Souls. Definitely, get your fill of Inside. I would prioritize your playthrough of it before you hit any of the other games of the year, even above like The Witness, because there's really there's so much to get out of Inside, both from like a commentary standpoint and just like an appreciation of gameplay design and how no two areas of the same. Limbo, it's all very dark and things go more so from like nature to machinery. In this one, you're swimming through infested waters and constantly on the run and being hunted. So heck yeah, you gotta play Inside. It's a game of the decade.
I would agree with that assessment. I'd say Inside has like a more compelling mystery across the whole game than a Limbo does.
Yeah.
And a much bigger payoff at the end.
Keep on rolling.
2016 stands out to me for one reason more so than any other, and that is first-person shooters had an incredible year this year. 4 come to mind, actually. We're talking Overwatch, Doom,
Titanfall.
Battlefield 1,
oh, never mind.
and Titanfall 2, yes. Of those, let's give a round of applause to Titanfall 2. Having a single-player campaign that's like super short, super sweet, and applies all of the very unique movement mechanics of the Titanfall franchise to a single-player context and pull it off so well is amazing to me. Like, that is one of the most satisfying, no fat on the bones campaigns I've played in a first-person shooter game ever.
I can agree with that, yeah.
And they also get weird with it. Like,
Wait, what?
You're platforming through this assembly line that's manufacturing homes for the frontier while the home is getting put together, and you're just like platforming through it while shooting.
Yeah. Do you have to like find cover as a wall is being moved in or something? Yeah.
Yep. That's going on. And there's also a whole level about time manipulation in a Titanfall game.
Oh
and
my
that's
god,
crazy.
yeah. There's like the floor is lava and you gotta switch between, yeah. Oh, I knew this.
Yeah, Titanfall 2, plus the multiplayer is just as robust and fun.
Dude, I've watched a playthrough of its campaign more than once. I'm just remembering now. Yeah. Oh, and you fight on the aircraft thing?
Yeah.
Yo, I can't say that I've ever looked up a playthrough of a first-person shooter campaign other than that.
Another one possibly worth looking up is Doom, because Doom is just a constant adrenaline rush. So different than all the other offerings on the market. Skip the multiplayer because that's not where it's at. It's all about that single-player campaign. You're playing the game of Doom constantly on the verge of death. Like, your health bar is constantly in the red, but the game intends for that to happen because the way you replenish health is not sitting behind the wall waiting for 3 seconds and having it auto-regenerate. The health comes out of the enemies. So it's just a perpetual killing machine in motion, and it's a work of art.
Bloodbornean.
Yeah.
I would say that although I don't think Doom need be on your must-play list for games of the decade, I definitely see it as part of the montage of the games of the decade. You know, just like a finishing blow on a monster kind of thing. That's a guarantee.
Yeah. Just like a cut below the must-plays.
Yeah.
Neither of us have played it, but this was the year in the indie sphere of Super Hot.
True, and that is, that's a sign of the times, definitely, that we are in the indie groundswell.
Yes. We already mentioned Inside, of course. We got Firewatch this year.
Which I just played yesterday, yeah.
And unfortunately, this was also the year we got No Man's Sky at launch.
Very important addendum.
Yes, at launch. Because that was maybe the game that most inaccurately lived up to people's expectations. That said, I didn't play it, so it didn't affect my enjoyment of the year. I had a great time. So, I don't know. I feel like 2016, maybe not 2015 levels of hype, but still sneaks into the A tier. What do you think about that?
Ooh, I mean, I guess if you really love Titanfall and Persona and Overwatch and Dishonored. Dishonored.
I wouldn't lump Persona into 2016.
No? I'm looking
Only
right at it.
if you live in Japan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I made that mistake.
Believe me, I would have been talking a lot about Persona.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Put it in A tier? Gosh, and you put 15 in A tier as well? 15 was arguably better than this year.
You think it's markedly better?
I mean, 15 will be like an A plus if this is an A.
All right. So you think B would be more appropriate?
No, because it's better than 2010. We didn't even talk about Uncharted.
Oh, Uncharted is great, but yeah, I didn't think you cared about Uncharted.
Well, I didn't care about Final Fantasy 15 either, but didn't that come out?
It did. It's funny, at the tail end of 2016, we got 2 games that had been in development for like a decade. Those being Final Fantasy 15 and also The Last Guardian.
Right, with the big dog. Yeah.
With the big Trico, the bird dog.
Yeah. And I didn't mention Civilization 6, but that came out this year. And then Darkest Dungeon, which is fond of some people.
Sounds like we're between B and A.
I'm okay with giving it an A.
All right.
But I think
Sweet.
we should revisit in the summary, we will revisit A.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Which brings us to the one I've most been looking forward to, 2017.
I can see why.
Let's.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Oh my god.
2017 was quite the time to be alive.
I don't care about these.
Oh, you don't care about 2017?
Oh my gosh, dude. 2017 is the year of Chris. Look at that.
It is literally the year of Chris. What was going on in the news?
Even Hollow Knight's here.
We'll get there. Probably worth mentioning that the Nintendo Switch came out this year with a weird release date, March 3rd, 2017.
I remember it, yeah.
You don't see consoles releasing in Q1 very often, but this was significant because Nintendo proved it could be done, it could be successful, and also significant because Nintendo had a bad couple years leading up to this. Like, the Wii U did not impress anybody.
Right.
But
it was
Switch,
no Wii.
It was no Wii. But the Switch won back the hearts and minds of video game fans across the globe. What a strong, central... I feel like it's doing a disservice to call it a gimmick. The portable or home console hybrid machine is just a fantastic idea.
Yeah, it's a fully fleshed out feature.
Yeah. So the Switch was significant. This is the year that I call the rise of the Battle Royale genre. Why? Because it gave us PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
Uh-huh.
And then in the fall, Fortnite introduced its Battle Royale mode. And the world was never the same ever again. So we got those. However, I think the most significant thing to me about 2017 is not a news event, but the emergence of a trend.
This is such your year.
This is such my year.
This is why you were reluctant to give 15 the S.
The trend I saw in 2017 was the return of an abundance of critically acclaimed Japanese-developed video games. Just to rattle some off, right in January, right from the very get-go, Resident Evil 7 comes out. It's a return to the form for the franchise after the disappointments of 5 and 6. Finally, people like Resident Evil again. And ever since then, we've been getting quality Resident Evil games with RE2 Remake. Also January, right off the bat, out of nowhere, this Yakuza franchise jumps into the Western mainstream consciousness after it had lived in relative obscurity since the PS2 days. Yakuza 0, suddenly people care, including me. That's my introduction. People calling 0 the best game of the franchise, but they didn't stop there. Kiwami came out the same year, a remaster of the first game.
Right.
And ever since 2017, we've been getting like 2 mainline Yakuza games per year, because last year we got Yakuza 6 and Kiwami 2. Like, it's not even annualized. They've doubled the production quantity of Yakuza games above Call of Duty. Moving on. In February, Neo from Team Ninja was the best From Software game not developed by From Software. They nailed the Dark Souls formula. This was the game people called Japanese Dark Souls before Sekiro came out. Moving on. In March, Nier Automata, proved to be a generation-defining experience when auteur Yoko Taro was finally given the budget and support in the form of Platinum Games' pedigree in order to couple his unique brand of storytelling to an actually mechanically competent game. Sorry, Drakengard. Sorry, original Nier. But Nier Automata, finally, people actually like to play Yoko Taro's games. Persona 5 comes out in April, setting a new gold standard for turn-based JRPGs across the board. And that is to say nothing about everything Nintendo brought to the table this year. Like, obviously, Super Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, all released to rave reviews. And then, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild rewrote the book in regards to open-world game design and picked up Game of the Year awards like it was going out of style. Japan was on fire. This is maybe not the best, most accurate way to quantify it with numbers, but just looking at the number of Japanese-developed game award nominations across a few years. 2014, Japanese games picked up 16 nominations. Okay, that's not too bad. Even slightly better in 2015 when they went up to 18. 2016, a little drop. Japanese games only picked up 13 nominations. How did 2017 fare? It ballooned into 38 nominations for Japanese-developed games in 2017, and that quality has not diminished across the subsequent years. Capcom is back.
Where'd they go?
Yeah.
Wait, didn't they do Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite?
Yeah, I forget the year on that, but okay. Maybe...
No, that was this year.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay. I strategically omitted that one. So, the trend I wanted to highlight was Japanese games are back. I managed to talk about several of them. But that's not to discount Western games either, because 2017 is full of bangers no matter who you are. We've got Prey. We've got Hollow Knight. We've got Horizon Zero Dawn, baby.
Yeah.
It's just, the quality does not stop. We've got Divinity Original Sin 2, which I've been meaning to get to. We've got Total War Warhammer 2. Oh my gosh. This is Chris's year. This is the quintessential Chris year. Pyre came out because Supergiant is still a thing. We got a Dishonored game again with Death of the Outsider. We got 2 Arcane games in the same year. Can you believe it? I care about Assassin's Creed again because of Origins this year.
Not only is it the Chris year, but it's also like everybody else's year. There's so much, like Odyssey.
Origins? Oh, you mean Super Mario Odyssey.
Super Mario Odyssey. Sorry, yeah. Dude, it's so much. Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
And then like the footnotes for 2017 are like Hollow Knight, like you said, Sonic Mania, Shadow of War, and then friggin' Senua's Song in the Crash and Insane trilogy.
Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah. Oh, I said song.
What Remains of Edith Finch, my favorite walking simulator, came out this year.
Right. So not only so it's clearly in the S tier for you personally, but it's also in the S tier for like everybody else. It's Nintendo came on super strong, and then all the other games, Persona and AC Origins, like rose to the occasion, and then the Battle Royale sprinkles on top. It's leagues above the first half of the decade.
Absolutely. Even the games I don't care for, per se, were bangers in the form of, like, Cuphead. People adore that game.
Cuphead is a game you should play among the decade.
2017 felt like it started extremely strong and then never slowed down. Every month was just a treasure trove of new gems to experience. So, can I sway you to give 2017 the S tier ranking?
Yes. Now it's so obvious that this is deserving, and it's such a stark comparison.
Oh man, Danganronpa 3 came out this year.
Okay, I'm listening to some Danganronpa songs through the Silva Gunner King for Another Day tournament.
Interesting.
That's underway.
Okay, now that the gush is over...
Oh my gosh.
How 2018.
I mean, how about it?
Basically, the only news story, it's not even like one story. It's just that this was the year Fortnite truly reached its apex of ubiquity. It had the Avengers Infinity War crossover with Thanos. Drake streamed with Ninja on Twitch. When NFL players were celebrating touchdowns, they would do Fortnite emotes. We were truly living in a dystopia that Fortnite had cultivated in 2018.
An unimaginable separation by early 2010 standards.
Yeah. The ubiquity is just crazy. Maybe worth mentioning how, 2018, the cries for video game developer unification reached new heights, especially around those stories coming out with Rockstar and the release of Red Dead Redemption 2 and those infamous 100-hour work weeks. That's all I took away from 2018 in the news. What did you think about the games, Heath?
Well, the surprise delights that were Spider-Man and Detroit Become Human are a feather in its cap, right?
Oh, yeah. I definitely. Those are very enjoyable experiences.
And then there's the heavy hitters that we knew were going to be good. God of War, and then Red Dead 2, and then Smash Ultimate.
Yeah. 3 very strong contenders. Not our game, but Monster Hunter World, people love. It's actually,
they do.
It's actually Capcom's best-selling game, full stop. It's sold better than any Resident Evil game. Can you imagine that?
That's particularly interesting.
It is. Taking what has traditionally been this handheld franchise that's only really popular in Japan and making it for everyone.
And the quality of life features in World have completely obsolescenced the first iterations.
Right. Assassin's Creed just chugging along, doing its new thing with Odyssey. People dug it. Okay, let's talk about indie games, because I thought this was a particularly strong year for the indie stuff. Just like games we've played, such as Into the Breach.
Yay.
And Return of the Obra Dinn.
Yay. Well, you also got your fix with Spyro.
Yeah. A super competent remaster. Very happy to see that. People adore Celeste. People are not quite as hot on Pokemon Let's Go, but hey, you can't win them all. Yeah, I mean, currently God of War is the standout to me, but that may change with my impending playthrough of Red Dead Redemption 2 coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Tetris Effect. That's gorgeous.
It was. It's like a hotel lobby game. How artistic it is.
Yeah. But how do you feel about this statement, Heath? 2018 has some really hard hitters I can point to, but the full roster maybe is a bit lacking.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as fleshed out as some of the years we've come across so far.
Oh, as some of the years we've come across? I
feel like 2015 might be better rounded.
Yeah.
That said, I think this is in the top half of the years of the decade.
It is, assuredly.
My mind immediately went to B tier, but I could see a case being made for A tier.
I could see a case being made for A. The fact that Smash and God of War were so important. Yeah. And there's really no stinkers except Fallout 76.
Oh dear, yeah. Oof. Big oof.
No, I wanna give it A. Not just
All right.
because of Detroit, but because of the things I listed.
You granted me the 2017 S tier. I'm totally fine with giving 2018 the A tier.
Imagine if I was like, I see 2017 as more of a B.
I think that would have ended the episode.
Yeah, ended the podcast.
Which brings us to the modern day. Last year, 2019, We're currently living it. The Game Awards have not happened yet.
Yeah, but even from where I'm sitting, it's no 2017.
Oh, most assuredly.
That's the new gold standard. Remember how people were saying that the best year for video games was 1997?
I've heard 97 or 98, yeah.
Yeah, because like GoldenEye, Final Fantasy, Castlevania. Anyway, back to the present.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I'm steadfast in my belief that 2017 was the best year the video game industry has ever experienced.
A convincing argument.
But we're not talking about 2017 anymore. Let's do 2019.
That's the past.
Stories, I mean, it's not the sexiest headline, but it's certainly surprised me that this is the year that I'll always remember. Sony just decided to ditch E3. They didn't show up. It's just baffling to me.
Well, Nintendo did it.
Yeah, they do their directs. And they have a presence on the show floor. People can like play their games. Sony just was not there. It was like a tumbleweed. And this is also the year that's going to go down in my memory as the year full of Epic Game Store controversies as they shook up the digital PC game market.
To my benefit.
Like across the whole year, there were news story after news story. The most recent of which is around Shenmue 3. Have you heard about this?
I have.
How this game kickstarted back in 2015. All the fans who have been dying for this game put in their money. At the time, the Epic Game Store, a platform that does not even exist, they had no expectation for it to be exclusive to the Epic Game Store on the PC. But that's the situation they find themselves in 4 years later when Epic Games buys the exclusivity deal over Steam. You can't get the game on Steam, even if you backed it 4 years ago. And yeah, people are upset.
Rightly so. I think Epic was granting them refunds, right?
I believe what happened is you have several bad options to choose from. You can, I think, wait a year longer and they will send you a Steam code for Shenmue 3.
That
or you can get your money refunded, maybe? I'm unsure. But those were the news headlines that stood out to me. What did you think about the games this year, Heath?
Well, let's avoid the Death Strandings and the Pokemons and the Outer Worlds, and let's just talk about Sekiro. And we have yet to talk about the Star Wars game,
which I hear is really good.
Well, did you watch the Donkey video though?
No, I did not.
Okay, because Donkey exploits the AI. Apparently, it's sufficiently buggy. Like the clones will be like, "You can't run from us," and then he'll put like something you need to jump across, and then the clones will be like, "I'm out of here," because they can't path their way to it. And the best part of the video is when Donkey is fighting like some late game zombie looking enemy, and he's like, "Oh no, they can jump across the gap."
Oh, that's pretty good. Worth noting that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order comes to us from Respawn, the makers of Titanfall, which is kind of notable because it's obviously not a first-person game. It's a big departure from what they're used to.
This is their first Dark Souls game.
Their first Dark Souls / Uncharted / Metroid game, yeah.
What else is there to say about it?
This is a hard year to commentate on because we've had less hindsight to reflect. Also, a lot of the games we just haven't played.
Well, you played Three Houses.
Yeah, and what a fun time that was. That was literally what I did for a month of my life. It was just Three Houses was my daily schedule, and Three Houses may as well have been my daily schedule in real life.
Okay, so if we make the case for how is this a Chris game of the year? Or no, not game of the year, but year of the decade. Your Devil May Cry is there.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Uh-huh.
Of course, Slay the Spire got its proper 1.0 release this year.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like There are a lot of examples you could point to for stinkers this year. I'm thinking of Anthem.
Oh, yeah.
Anthem. I'm thinking of Crackdown 3.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm thinking of even maybe not quite as egregious games like, there was a Far Cry game this year.
What?
Far Cry New Horizon or something like that. Just games that are completely forgettable. Oh, Rage 2 was this year, and people snoozed on that.
Snoozed. That's appropriate, yeah.
Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint came out as a buggy mess. But this is also the year that gave us Outer Wilds.
Ooh, I'm not going to say a must-play of the decade because it's so niche.
But it's our kind of niche?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said during our Game of the Year predictions, if I was grading this year, I would have given it a B+. Do you think that's still apt?
Yeah, it's resonating with me like that of a 2012.
Which would place it firmly in the B tier.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. So, do you want to go up the list or down the list?
Well, I just wanted to say, imagine if you had an accident and you were in a coma from 2013 to the beginning of 2015, and you woke up and you were like, oh man, I've been asleep for 2 years. What should I play? And we go, okay, Grand Theft Auto and one of the Assassin's Creeds. And then that's it. That's all you need to do. Essentially.
And Transistor.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, if we count all of our indies.
Because you're saying 2013 and 2014 were pretty stinkers.
Yeah, they had some gems, but they were few and far between by the later half of the decade's standards.
Yeah. Going up the list, the official Mobius Tubes Decade in Review tier list. At the bottom, in the D tier, as stated just before, we've got 2013 and 2014. A bit better in the C tier, all by itself, is 2011, just hanging out.
That's interesting.
Then, in the B tier, we've got a trifecta of 2010, 2012, and 2019. Didn't blow us away, but also respectable years, pretty within the norm, pretty average. Definitely above average in the A tier. We've got another trifecta, 2015, 2016, and 2018. All commendable. And then, hoo boy, in the S tier, 2017, which means, according to us, man, 2015 straight through to 2018, what a great time to be playing games.
Did you think of that for a second? We've been friends for that long. And did you think that would be the start of it? Like back in 2015, like, oh man, this is a golden age by some capacity. Isn't that crazy?
What was most surprising to me, when I first started really paying attention to what was going on in the gaming industry and kind of expanding my taste, trying more indie stuff, that was the tail end of 2011. Which means the first 4 years I was really paying attention. It wasn't like my primary hobby, let's say. It was 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014 were kind of my introduction to being a more well-rounded gamer.
Right.
And then when 2015 arrived, it was kind of a revelation. And then it just kept going. So I kind of became accustomed to the standards set of the 2011 to 2014 period, which it's remarkable to me how much better the past few years have been.
It's remarkable to me how we ever did homework. We were living in a video game golden age, and we still got decent grades.
You're referring to our college years, right?
Yeah. For the entirety that you were in college, you were in some of the best video game years in recent memory.
Right. Let's hope that with the with the emergence of the new consoles, this trend can continue.
Yeah, it's not going to slow down. We're coming up on Skyrim 2, for God's sake.
Exciting times ahead. That was a very long segment. We have an email, but I'm also kind of reluctant to address it right now. What do you think, Heath?
We ought to save the email for the next episode. It'll still make it into 2019, which is good.
Yeah. I feel myself fading. We wouldn't be able to do it justice.
How do you think our tier list is going to differ from everybody else's?
If they were to... I was saying, like, in comparison to a chain restaurant tier list, where the D tier is pretty lacking, since we're categorizing entire years of a video game releases, of course there's going to be lots of merits to every year. So our D tier shouldn't be this mark of shame on the year per se.
No.
Just comparatively relative, it was less impressive.
That's why I made it D, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
okay, I feel you.
But I'm saying that if the people that you listen to, if they did a tier list of the decade, how do you think it would change? Off the bat, I'm going to say that they're going to put 2013 a lot higher because they care more for the GTAs and the Battlefields.
Absolutely, yeah. And listening to like the 2013 coverage at the time, I feel like most critics were pretty high on it, which I felt incongruous with my own experience. But yeah, so I think 2013 would be a lot higher.
Yeah. And then 2012 will go down because maybe they don't care for Dishonored as much or Walking Dead.
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah. So I think the early half of the decade will get mixed up, but I think there will be a relative consensus for the later half.
I agree with that.
And then 2019, who knows?
Right. The jury's kind of still out on that one.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a wrap, right?
Yeah, I'll let you get off. You did the bulk of the talking for the decade breakdown.
And you did the bulk of the game playing. Never before has there been such a disparity where one of us brings one game and the other brings you had 4 or 5?
With some tabletops in there, and we'll see if I can keep this trend going. You know what's the thing is that Bailey's new job doesn't start until January, so we have lots of free time. So I'll probably
very good
get her to do things other than like Detroit.
And you too, dear listener, can send us an email at mobiustubespodcast@gmail.com, and we will, in a very late fashion, eventually read it on the show.
Well, and hopefully, folks, if you have any emails that you want to have written, it'd be the last email of the decade. That would be pretty ceremonious. And then you just fill it with nonsense.
Yeah, so this is another long episode. Next episode, we've got lots of segments we could slot in there. We've got the email. We've got to do our top 10 games of the year.
Oh, crap. Oh, man. Next episode's going to be huge.
And then, do we do the return of Mobius Tubes, or is it too soon?
Let's.
We could.
Let me think about it. But now that I have relatives who are more curious about the podcast after us having done it for a year, maybe we hold off on Mobius Tubes so they can just hear our dialogue rather than the niche guessing game.
Sure. I feel like in the place of what we've been playing over the past week, the top 10 games of the year kind of fills the similar purpose.
Yeah.
So we could save some time there. And yeah, that'll be a wrap for episode 29. We'll see you one more episode this year for episode 30. Goodbye.
Goodbye.